Vice President Vance, thank you very much for joining us today. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So I want to start with this. President Trump has said that the indictment of James Comey is justice, not revenge. There is pushback to that, of course, among Democrats, including Senator Tim Kaine, who is calling it a complete political hatchet job. The president has said, quote, there will be others. And in the past, he has listed Adam Schiff and Letitia James. Do you think there are more indictments coming, and do you think that's justified?
Well, there's certainly going to be more indictments coming over the next 3.5 years of the Trump administration, but we're always going to let the law drive this stuff and the facts of the case and not political motivations, which frankly makes us so much different from the Biden administration, where they indicted not just the president of the United States, but so many people who were just engaged in the basic job of politics, who were engaged in policymaking, who disagreed with the Biden administration, and because that they faced prosecution from that same administration. If you look at the Comey indictment, Martha, this was a grand jury indictment delivered in Alexandria, Virginia, not exactly a hotbed of Donald Trump's political support. There were three requested indictments. The grand jury returned 2 of those 3 indictments. So I think they showed they were judicious. I think that it showed clearly that there were a couple of things that James Comey did wrong. And to the people who are saying that this is all political, I mean, look, if you look at our track record in the Trump administration, there have been people who have been prosecuted, who have been political allies, who agree with our politics. There have been people who disagree with our politics. We're not letting politics drive this. We're letting the requirements of the justice system and the law drive this. And unfortunately for James Comey, when I look at this indictment, I see a guy who lied under oath, and he'll have his day in court. He'll have his opportunity to prove the other case in front of the jury. But the idea that this is driven by politics, I think is preposterous when you actually read the details of the indictment and the obvious fact that James Comey did lie under oath to Congress multiple times.
All right, we'll see where it goes. With regard to Gaza, President Trump said that it's, quote, looking like we have a deal that would end the war, bring the hostages back. Can you tell us any more details about that and when we might see that deal roll out?
Yeah, so there's a very complicated negotiation happening right now between Arab leaders, between the Israelis, and of course between the Trump administration led by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. So those conversations are happening as we speak. They're ongoing over the course of the past couple of days. I'm going to let those negotiations play out, but I think the president's optimism is warranted here. I feel more optimistic about where we are right now than where we have been at any point in the last few months, but let's be realistic. These things can get derailed at the very last minute. So while I remain very hopeful, I am cautiously hopeful. I'm going to let the diplomats continue to work on this. But our principle here is very simple. We want all the hostages to come home. We want Hamas to no longer be a terror threat to the state of Israel. And we also want to bring the humanitarian aid in Gaza for the many innocent people who are caught up in the conflict. So I think we're close to accomplishing all 3 of those objectives.
Yeah, that is the resolution I think that everybody wants to see at this point. I thought it was interesting this week that President Trump said that he would not allow Gaza to be controlled by Israel, Vice President.
Well, I think the president's been very clear. He actually wants Gaza to be controlled by the people who live there. He wants the West Bank to be controlled by the people who live there. And he wants the terrorist networks that are around the Israelis to be dismantled so they can no longer pose a threat to Israel, especially the innocent civilians who live in Israel. It's never easy, as we've learned in the Middle East over many years. This stuff comes in fits and starts, and it can take very weird turns. But I think the president has gotten us to a point where we're at the 1-yard line, and all of us are very hopeful we can sort of punch through to the end zone and accomplish a major, major thing for peace in the region.
So let me take your attention, if I may, to Ukraine and Russia. This week, obviously, the United Nations General Assembly, and on the sidelines of that, President Trump made a statement, very strong statement.
Russia should have stopped it, but the other side can fight too, and they've proven that. Maybe it could be that Russia's a paper tiger.
Were you surprised by this? He also said, I should add a very important part, that he thought Ukraine will get all the territory back, because for some time we heard that Ukraine was going to have to give up some of the territory that they lost in this war. So were you surprised by this statement, and what changed?
No, I wasn't surprised at all, Martha. And one of the things I really admire about the president's approach to this entire conflict, and frankly, all the diplomatic efforts of the administration, is that it's very grounded in reality and what's happening on the ground. If you go back to the last days of the Biden administration, if you go back to even a couple of months ago, the Russians were conquering large amounts of territory. Every month, they were gaining another couple hundred square kilometers, maybe more than that. And what's happening right now, as the president articulated, is Russia's really stalled. They're killing a lot of people. They themselves are losing a lot of people, and they don't have much territorial gain to show for it. And so the president is looking at the situation. He's saying, look, the Russian economy is in shambles. The Russians are not gaining much on the battlefield. It's clearly time for them to listen to his passionate plea for them to come to the table and actually talk seriously about peace. So you ask what's changed. I think what's changed is the reality on the ground where the Russians are killing a lot of people. They're losing a lot of people. They don't have much to show for it. We remain committed to peace, but it takes two to tango. And unfortunately, what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, the Russians have refused to sit down with any bilateral meetings with the Ukrainians. They've refused to sit down with any trilateral meetings where the president or some other member of the administration could sit down with the Russians and the Ukrainians. So our view is we want peace here. We've been actively pursuing peace from the very beginning of the administration, but the Russians have got to wake up and accept reality here. A lot of people are dying. They don't have a lot to show for it. How many more people are they willing to lose? How many more people are they willing to kill for very little, if any, gain in the military advantage on the ground there? I think the answer is hopefully not that much, but certainly our attitude here is we're going to keep on working for peace, and we hope the Russians actually wake up to the reality on the ground.
Well, I think the feeling was at the Alaska meeting that the Russians were going to come to the table in a meaningful way. We've seen that they have only stepped up their attacks since then, and now we do hear a very different tune from President Trump. Just quickly, here's what Volodymyr Zelensky's response was when Brett said, "Were you surprised by this?" Watch.
Are you surprised to hear that?
A little bit. A little bit. It was a little bit surprise for me. You're right. I was very positive signals from the side that Trump and America will be with us to the end of the war. Yes, as we will see. Brett, we will see, but God bless.
So, Vice President Vance, now Zelensky is requesting that the United States sell Tomahawk missiles towards this effort to European nations. They go 1,000 miles. They have Moscow in their guided missile range. This is something that the United States has rejected. The president has rejected in requests in the past, but now President Trump has said to Zelensky, quote, we'll work on it. Do you support that?
Well, right now, as the president said, Martha, we're looking at it. We're certainly looking at a number of requests from the Europeans. And one of the things, again, that I think has really worked about the president's policy in Ukraine and Russia is that it's forced the Europeans to step up in a big way. So as you know, Martha, we're no longer just giving tons of money and weapons. What we're doing is asking the Europeans to buy that weaponry. That shows some European skin in the game. I think that gets them really invested in both what's happening in their own backyard, but also in the peace process that the president has been pushing for the last 8 months. So we're going to keep on working on all of this stuff. But our simple message right now, the Russians are not gaining a lot. This war is terrible for their economy. And they have to ask themselves, how many more people are they willing to lose? And how many more people are they willing to kill for very little military advantage?
But would you be okay with them having Tomahawk missiles and the threat that that would pose and the possible escalation it would pose? Because there was a time when you were very much in favor of, backing away from this situation in terms of our support of Ukraine.
Well, one of the things I've always said, Martha, is I wanted the Europeans to step up in a big way. I wanted us, the United States, to stop shoveling money and weaponry to a conflict that was so far away, when I felt like the Europeans, with all due respect for them, were not actually taking their fair share of the burden. Because of the president's leadership, you now have the Europeans buying weaponry from the United States as opposed to us giving it. And you asked this question about Tomahawks. It's something the president's going to make the final determination on. What the president is going to do is what's in the best interest of the United States of America. That's the driving light between his foreign policy decisions, between his defense policy decisions, and that will be the same heuristic that we apply to how we answer this question about tomahawks. I'll let the president speak to it, but I know that we're having conversations this very minute about that issue.
Okay. I want to squeeze in two more here. The first one is TikTok. This deal, the parameters are being announced. We're learning more of it as of yesterday. It sounds like a percentage, a slice of the pie, will still be controlled by China. And it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that the algorithm would be in the control of U.S. companies. But are you concerned that having that sliver still owned by ByteDance, which is controlled by China, might leave China a back door to that algorithm that could exploit our national security?
No, I'm not worried about that, because the way that we've set up this deal from a national security perspective is that it's the American investors and the American business people who will make the determination about what's actually happening with TikTok. So at the end of the day, I believe that north of 80% of the company will be owned by the American investors and their partners. This is not something where the Chinese or any Chinese entity has a large stake at the table. The board seats, there will be 7 board seats of the company. 6 of them will be controlled by the American investors and their partners. So I feel very confident that we have successfully separated this company from TikTok Global and actually made it so that we can control people's data security. We can ensure that the algorithm is not being used as a propaganda tool by a foreign government, and that fundamentally we allow people to access this tool and this application that a lot of Americans love. It was a very difficult balance to strike, but I think we've done it successfully. And of course, we're going to keep working on it, Martha. The important thing about this deal is the United States still has the ability to review the terms of the transaction and review the national security implications of the new entity, not just over the next 100 days, but over the next many years.
Yep, that's security, obviously a really important element of this whole equation for Americans. Last question, Vice President. You know, this government shutdown issue looming next week. How do you see this, and are you opposed to a shutdown, or do you think there would be advantages to that potentially?
Well, look, we don't want to shut down the government, Martha, but it's really up to the Democrats. Under our system, you need 60 Senate Democrats to vote for the clean continuing resolution that the president and House Republicans have put forward. I think it's preposterous, Martha, and I think the American people really should pay attention to the fact that Democrats are threatening to shut down the entire government because they want to give hundreds of billions of dollars of health care benefits to illegal aliens. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen a political party actually advertising the fact that they want to shut down every essential function of government, and they want to use that as leverage so that they get more money for illegal alien health care benefits. It's such a stark contrast between Republicans who are trying to put the interests of the American people first and Democrats who I think would want to take money from the American people to give benefits to illegal aliens. We don't want to shut down the government, but if Democrats refuse to just pass this clean continuing resolution, that's exactly what's going to happen, and I think the Democrats are going to bear the responsibility for it.
All right, we'll see what happens. Vice President Vance, thank you very much. Good to have you with us on Fox News Sunday.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.